You're listening to the See the Unseen podcast, where our number one focus is creating a little visibility for people who deserve a whole lot of spotlight. I'm your host, Melissa Dorjob, and I'm here to share some amazing stories that can transform and inspire lives. So get ready to take those blinders off and see the unseen. And welcome to the podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Joan Vassos, ABC's first ever Golden Bachelorette. But before being on the Golden Bachelorette, she was a contestant on ABC's The Bachelor Gerry season, Gerry Turner. We will talk today about her life experiences, wisdom, and perspectives on love and relationships. I hope to showcase her journey, her individuality, and the qualities that make her a captivating figure. So welcome to the podcast, Joan.
Thank you so much for having me and for that very nice introduction. Thank you.
Of course. So I am so excited to have you today. I wanted to have you on quite some time ago, and we'll kind of go into that a little bit. But I want to hear a little bit about your background. So if you want to start us off, just tell me a little bit about how you grew up, what your family's like, that sort of thing.
Sure, you're right. We've been trying to get together for months, so I'm glad I'm finally get to be on your show. So I had actually a really average childhood. I had parents who were married until my father passed away. My mom was still alive. I had one brother. I had a really small family, actually, which motivated me to have a much bigger family. My mom was an orphan, and my dad grew up in Holland during World War II. So he immigrated here from Holland, and we kind of had almost no family that lived in the United States. So it was just my brother and I. So as I got older, I decided I always loved going to those kids' houses in the neighborhood that had like 5 brothers and sisters, and it was total chaos. And I kind of decided that's what I wanted for me. So I met John when I was in college, and we got married, and we had 4 kids in 6 years. So there's my John. We thought we'd start our family right away, and we do it quickly. So now all my kids, as they grew up, they were only 6 years apart in age. So our house was like always the party house, always a lot of kids over. My husband always coached my kids' teams, and we had a pool. So we were the place where everybody gathered. So it was, fun chaos during their childhood. And I went to University of Maryland. I majored in computer science. I was kind of a computer math nerd. I kind of came out of my shell when I got on the Golden Bachelor, to be honest. I was always shy up until then. I had stage fright. I didn't like to speak in front of people, and all that was cured, but not until very, very, very much later in life for me. And so John and I got married, and we raised our kids, and we were just getting to the part of our life when we were making plans to kind of be a couple again. Our last child was in college. And when he was a junior in college, my son Luke was a junior in college, John was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and he passed away 2 years later, almost 2 years to the day, a month before it was the 2-year anniversary of his diagnosis. He actually was diagnosed on Valentine's Day. At that point, I had a daughter who was married and had a child, so he got to meet one of his grandchildren. And subsequently, my other daughter has gotten married. My oldest son is engaged, and my youngest son has a serious girlfriend. So I have 3 grandkids now, and hoping for a ton more. And I think you kind of know the story from that point on. At least the interesting part, I did get a job after I'd raised my kids for a while. I was a computer programmer for a bunch of years, and then went back to work as a consultant in the kind of the education industry. And then subsequently, after John passed away, I was like, I need to get out of the house. So I went and got a job at a school that my sons had gone to. It was an all-boys private school, and I worked in the alumni relations and development, so fundraising, for a little while. And then I went on the show. So, and here I am.
Wow. Well, first off, I just want to throw a picture, and I hope I didn't throw you off there, but I have a few pictures that I want to throw. This is your family here. So tell us from left to right who these people are.
So far left is my son Luke. He's my baby. Next to him is Erica. She's number 2. So it goes boy, girl, girl, boy. So Luke is the youngest. Erica is the second oldest. Then that's my beautiful John, and then that's me. And then my oldest son, Nick, is the one second to the end. And then for the far right is my daughter, Allison.
That's awesome. So it's so great. You wanted to have a big family. You knew right away that that's what you wanted. And,
Yep.
I kind of grew up, I have two older brothers and an older sister, but they grew up and moved away 7 and 10 years older than me. And so I kind of grew up as an only child.
Yeah.
But it's funny you say about the pool, because I always tell, my my daughter, I say, Kaylee, I'm going to put a pool. I put a pool in almost every house I'm in. And she says, Mom, do we really need a pool? And I said, well, I could die tomorrow. Yes, we need a pool. So that's where all the family gathers. Like, do I get in the pool? No. But like you said, it's your family that you want to pull together and make the memories.
True. Isn't that funny? Yeah. Have a pool, they will come.
That's right. And now I just became a grandma too. So my little grandbaby is 2 years old, and I don't know about you, but like, they are the best thing ever. Like,
I know, so much better than kids.
For sure. Yeah.
I know. So, I have 3 now. Do you have a boy or a girl?
I have a boy. His name's Shane.
Good for you. My oldest grandson is a boy. His name is Boomer. And then my youngest is Maverick. And then I have a little granddaughter named Hartley. You can see I'm bragging, like anybody needs to know all about my kids, but I just have to say it because I'm so proud of them.
Well, you should be. Yeah. And so I have a couple pictures of you and John here.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about, I know you, I've heard a lot of people, both good and bad. Of course, everybody has their opinions, right? Like, why does she have to talk about her ex-husband or whatever? But, I want to hear from you. Like, seems to be very special to you. Like, for me, I'm married. I can't imagine losing my husband. And like, I don't think anybody would ever measure up. Right. So, and I'm sure you felt that way at one point, but tell me a little bit about like your love story and why he meant so much to you.
Yeah, I certainly did get a lot of mixed opinions about me talking about John on the show. It actually wasn't my intent, and I really didn't plan on doing that. But as I started having feelings for other men on the show, so eventually Chalk, and kind of early on Chalk, I started having all these thoughts about John again, and it was weird. And I certainly didn't want that to happen. I wanted, my intent was kind of to move on. John was always going to be part of my life, but I thought I had to move on and let go of him for me to have somebody else. And it turns out that's not true. That you don't have to let go, and you can always be in love with him. And so when I got that free pass, I actually had a meeting with one of the show's psychiatrists and said, I don't think I can do this. I feel like I am still in love with John. Like, how do I fall in love with somebody else? And she said, you don't have to stop loving John. Why do you think that? I was like, I don't know. I just thought that's what I was supposed to do. And she's like, no, it'd be weird if you did. She said, it's okay to love John still. And so now I had this freedom that I could still love John. And I felt comfortable talking about him. And I didn't ever want his memory to go away. And I thought people would be curious about him. I'm certainly curious about, Chalk's late fiance, and we talk about his wife, and they're part of you, they're part of your past. So to just pretend that they didn't happen and they weren't part of like your emotional development and why you are who you are or how you became that way. I mean, like John and I grew up together. We were in our 20s when we met, early 20s. We were like 21 when we met. So we kind of, we experienced adulthood together. We experienced a lot of big things in our life. So he was always going to be part of my life. So if there was somebody who thought that we should ignore that, then I think they're wrong. I don't think they understand, how important your past is in making you who you are today. And if you really, plan to spend your life with somebody and love them, then you need to know all about them.
That's great. And, isn't it awesome that, that the show had someone on there for you to speak with? Because sometimes we just hold on to so many of these things that are in our mind that we struggle with. And to have some counseling there. And I always thought that about years past, like, could they have a counselor on the show or something? But to have somebody that, you finally did speak to, and you were holding this on for so long, and then to just be able to let go of it, how freeing is that?
Yeah. In fact, there's a part of me that thought I probably wouldn't have ever figured that out on my own. So, and I'll tell you, when John first passed away, I did actually look for a counselor, not actually a counselor. I really wanted to be in a group of people because I wanted not necessarily hear what like a counselor had to say. I wanted to hear how other people my age were like getting through this and like what life looked like a little farther down the road. So people that were at the same place I was, or maybe farther along in the journey, I wanted to see like how this was all going to work because I didn't know how to navigate this. Like this is not a place I ever thought I was going to be. I never thought I was going to be, 58 and single and not have John with me anymore. I had planned my whole future around having him with me. We were planning our future together. And then all of a sudden he was gone and my future was gone. It was like this black hole. Like I had nothing to look forward to. I had nothing to plan for. I had no one to be in this next phase of life with. I just felt really alone and I felt lost and I felt like kind of hopeless. So going on the show, even though I had, those feelings weren't as raw anymore. And I actually never found one of those groups. It happened to be, you passed away during COVID. So there weren't any groups. And I thought there weren't even any online groups. The only ones I could find were much older people, not the people that were at the same, phase of their life as I was. So I never found that person. So I just kind of, processed the things as best I could. And going on the show, when I started developing feelings for chalk, I started to realize that I wasn't ready. And even though my heart and head kind of had finally met and decided that they were ready to move on, apparently my heart really wasn't ready like I thought it was. And, they do always have, Bachelor does a really good job of making sure everybody is feeling safe and comfortable and emotionally supported. And they have 2 psychiatrists on the set. And you always have access to them. And so I was like, yeah, I need a little help. First time I ever thought I needed help. They always check in with you anyway and just make sure you're doing okay, especially when you first come on the show, when you leave the show, and anytime during the show, they kind of do periodic check-ins. But I was like, yeah, I need somebody now because I'm not sure if I can continue doing the show because I feel like I'm cheating these guys. I'm pretending that I'm ready and apparently I'm not. And, when I called on them, they gave me a really good way of thinking about this. And what they said was, you pretend John is a balloon in this hand, and then whoever you're thinking about, whatever the man that you're falling in love with or have feelings for is a balloon in this hand. They said you don't have to let go of this balloon to hold on to this balloon. They said they can exist together, and that there's enough room in your heart and love that you could have it for 2 people, one that's gone and will always be somebody that you love, and then love for somebody new.
That's awesome. I'm so glad that you got such great advice. I worked with a leadership. Sometimes advice comes from counseling. Sometimes advice can come from a leadership coach. I once worked with a leadership coach that for years, I hung on to the fact that, I went to about 3 years of college, but I never graduated college and I never got my degree. And so, because I grew up poor, I worked my way up in the company and I was devoting my whole life to the organization, if you will. And I asked my boss if I should go back and he said, not if this is what you want to do. And I was advocating for people with disabilities. So I knew I didn't want to do anything else. And I was a single mom. And anyway, a leadership coach, eventually I worked with him and he said, well, Melissa, let me ask you a question. What's your biggest insecurity? And I didn't even want to tell him. And I ended up telling him. And I said, fine, I'll tell you. It's that I didn't get my degree. And he said, well, let me ask you a question. Do you think you want to go back to school? I said, no. He said, do you think that piece of paper is going to help you make more money? I said, no. And he said, well, what's another story you could tell yourself? And I said, well, that these guys that were on my leadership team, they had all went to, Duke and, all these prestigious colleges. And he's like, I said that they'll never have the domain expertise that I have of 30 years. And he said, well, why don't you start telling yourself that story? And, just having another person tell you something like that, it was so freeing. I was like, yeah, I am going to tell myself that. Like, I've been successful. Why do I need a piece of paper,
Absolutely. In fact, these days, people are saying it's a waste of money.
Yeah. So I think you can learn a lot from other people. But there was something you said. You were saying that, you didn't even know where to go. Like you were lonely at one point. And this is where I feel like you and I connected because this is when you were on Gerry season and you made a comment and you were talking about how lonely, you were and feeling isolated or maybe not seen. And I felt that way too. Like I had lost my job after 30 years. My kids were grown. I'm 54 years old. I was thinking, I've made my money. I've been successful in my career, but I'm like, is this it? Like, where do I go from here? And I felt like you were saying something similar. And I was watching Gerry's season and you were on. And first of all, I just thought you were beautiful. And you just looked amazing. I'm like, this lady is classy. Of course, I'm, how you get them all in the line and you're like, okay, like her hair, good clothes, nice person, or that would, no, you're not making it.
Right, she was funny, right, yeah.
You were literally my favorite. And I'm like, she's going to win. And so you were on the show and you made a comment. You were riding in the car and you said, as you get older, you become more invisible. People don't see you anymore. You're not as significant as when you were young. And I thought, you know what? Here's this beautiful woman, and she's saying this. And, and I felt like that's how I felt. I was like, you know what? When you're young, you get, you're walking in the grocery store and you get a head turn or something. And as you
Right.
get older, it's like, where's all the head turns? Or like, do
Yeah.
people even know? Like when I lost my job, I felt like the people you thought would reach out to you didn't. The ones that you didn't think would do. And then I was like, where are all these? Like, I'm very extroverted. I'm very outgoing. I've always had a lot of friends and family, but I, for whatever reason, just felt alone. And I thought, if I can feel this way, then other people must feel this way. And when you said that, I was just like, look at this woman on here. Like, she feels this way too. So tell me a little bit, like, what were the specific moments that made you feel unseen or overlooked?
Yeah, it kind of happened gradually, and I didn't realize it until it was like already ingrained in me that I was insignificant suddenly. And I feel like as you get into your 20s and 30s, people of that age are becoming more important in the workplace. They're becoming more important in their homes. They're raising their kids. We are out there buying houses. We are, moving up in our careers. We're going back to school, getting, master's degrees or whatever. You are like in the production mode. You are the part of the society that is achieving. And then when you get to be like in your 50s, kind of around there, or maybe even 60s, but as you're, inching up a little bit, you are now starting to take a back seat to the 30-year-olds. So people are starting to look at them when they're coming to work, and people are seeing, they're moving up quickly, and you're moving up, less quickly or not at all anymore. And slowly they're starting to catch up to you and maybe even overtake you. And that's the same, like as far as buying homes. And, you're not buying another big home when you're 60. You're doing that when you're 30. You're not going out and getting another degree. You did that already. You're not, going for, the being the high up in the company. You're kind of like stationary in your career at that point, and you stop being as significant because the next generation is now taking over. And I started feeling that way. I started feeling like I went from being a really super busy mom and being out there community and volunteering and working and raising my kids and being in charge of their sports teams to not having all those responsibilities anymore, and nobody really caring about, if I was the team mom or whatever. And at the same time, right around then is when John passed away. And I went from being a couple to being a single. And that takes you out of a whole bunch of social interactions, because as a couple, you're invited out to couple things. So couples dinners, couples vacations, all those things you do as couples. Weddings. I mean, I was invited to weddings, but sometimes I wasn't, because I'm a single at a table, and that's a pain in the neck, and it's awkward. So all of a sudden I went from being this couple to being a single. I stopped being invited to the couples vacations. So all my friends, that the women were still my friends, the men really weren't, because I wasn't part of that couple anymore. So now I just had a group of women friends, and like we would go out. So I had lots of friends. I was like you, I'm outgoing, I had lots of friends, I had family, but I was a single person now. And I ended up going only on girls things, and maybe an occasional girls trip. Kind of, they were very occasional, because most people that are married want to go with their significant other. A vacation, a bunch of couples is fun. And I stopped being involved, invited to those. I stopped being invited to ones where I introduced all the couples, and then I was the man out. And it was the same thing. I'd see pictures of a bunch of people out to dinner, and I wasn't there. These were all my really good friends, but I wasn't part of that. They'd be at the beach together. I wasn't invited on that trip. So my friends were still my friends. I just was excluded from a lot of things. And I don't blame them. I mean, having an extra person is, like, who's going to take care of Joan tonight or whatever. And I also started feeling that way about my kids, and they didn't realize this, but I didn't want to be a burden on them. So when you don't have your other half, you start being the one, like, who's going to take care of mom this weekend, or who's going to invite, mom for whatever. And it didn't really occur yet, but I knew it was coming, because I knew as your kids get older, they start to form their own little lives. So they, find their spouses and they start having kids. And as their kids get older, they get involved in their kids' worlds. And like the parents become less significant. So I was going to be, as a grandparent, less significant in their world. And I knew it was coming. So I was already feeling less significant in the couple's world. I was feeling less significant in the work world. I didn't see me getting a career and moving up, even though now I suddenly have all this time. I no longer have a husband. My kids are grown. I suddenly have time. And I don't think anybody really wants me in that world. And it was even as small as going to a restaurant and standing in front of the hostess stand, and there's 20 people standing around and no one would look at me. The hostess, I'd be like, so over here, just their table for two or whatever. And they looked at every other person and took their, name and like ignored me. So I just started feeling that I wasn't seen. Like people just didn't care anymore. And even like, once again, even though I had a great family and had lots of friends, I felt lonely. I would go out with my girlfriends and I'd come home to an empty house. So that's kind of when I decided that like that whole seen, unseen somewhat could be solved if I maybe had a significant other. It would help because in the long run, if you're just seen by one person, it's comforting. And so I was just subsequently started looking for like the person that I had that I didn't realize I was unseen until he was gone.
Wow, because he probably just doted over you too, and that he was so much a part of your life.
Yeah,
Isn't that
he loved
interesting?
me. We did everything together.
It could be just one person saying something kind or noticing you and knowing that you're there. Like I know I mentioned this to a girlfriend I saw this past weekend. I said, I just felt really lonely at the time that I lost my job. And at one point I was single and my kids were grown and and she's like, why would you feel that way? And then I'm like, yeah, that's why for me, I do this podcast. It's of course called See the Unseen Podcast, so that I bring a little visibility to, I think, people who deserve the whole spotlight. And I think there's so many different people who don't feel seen, that started with, people with disabilities, it also helping young women grow in their career that don't feel like they're heard or seen. And then I'm friends with some singer-songwriters in Nashville that write for Carrie Underwood and Luke Bryan, and to name a few, and they're the creative, song or the creative minds behind the songs. They're not seen. And then I think, my faith is like believing in what you can't see. So I love that you said that. I love that you were just so real and authentic in that moment. Take me to the next step of what happened, because you went on Gerry's season, and here's a picture of you with Gerry. He's asking you, will you accept this rose? I'm sure. Yeah. And here's his dinner. So, and I love that dress. I thought you look amazing.
Thank you.
So tell me who thought of going on The Bachelor? Because first we're going to talk about The Bachelor versus when you were the Golden Bachelorette.
Yep.
Tell me about what happened. How did you even find out about this? Did you complete an application? What happened?
Yeah, typically from what I've seen, when women are on the show, they usually apply themselves. When men are on the show, somebody applies them for them. So like for my show, when I was the Golden Bachelorette, almost all the men had daughters that applied them. But on the Golden Bachelor show, so when we were all there to, meet Gerry, we almost all of us applied ourselves. So I had gone through like a little dating, season. After John had passed away, the first year, and they say after a year you'll be ready. I wasn't even close to being ready. It was like first year was like a blur. I hardly even remember it. And then the second year, kind of at the end of the second year, my head was saying, like, you're not getting any younger, you're not getting any prettier, and the pool of people is pretty small. So if you really think you're going to find somebody and spend the second half of your life with them, and I was viewing like this is I could have another 30 years with somebody. Like this is really a big chunk of life that I'm thinking about, and I'm just not going to like kind of let it go and pretend that I don't deserve to have a second half of chance at love or have a fulfilled life. So in my head, I was saying, it's time to start. You shouldn't waste any more time. But my heart hadn't really caught up with my head. I really wasn't into it. I was just kind of going through the motions. And I kept thinking maybe like I would have a friend or a friend of a friend would set me up with somebody. I just thought I would, meet somebody in an easy way. Somebody would set me up with them. And it turned out like nobody really had any great friend that they think, I would, love. Most people said, oh, one of the guys I know, or I don't really know anybody. Everybody I know is married, which was really typical. And then I thought, I'll meet somebody organically. I'll be out at a restaurant or at a wedding or to whatever. And that never happened either. So, the easy ways, the natural ways, that the way that I did it when I was younger and the way you probably did it when you're younger, there were no dating apps. You went out and you met people. Those ways were not happening. So
let me stop you real quick, because you said a couple of things. You're like, I'm not getting any younger. I'm getting older. I'm not going to be prettier. Like, you had this like negative talk in your head, which a lot of women do. But why did you have such a hard time finding someone? Look how beautiful you are, all put together, smart, successful. Like, I mean, were you picky? Were you, or was it just hard to meet people?
Just hard to meet people. I certainly organically, it was hard to meet people. On a dating app, it was easy, but like just out. So like picture yourself at a restaurant. And like, think about it when you were young. So like, let's say you went to a restaurant or a bar when you were young, and you would look around and you'd be like, oh my God, everybody's here is single, right? I mean, that's what age we were. When you were 20s, you assume everybody around is single. So you have like a world of people. When you go to a restaurant when you're my age, you assume everybody there, even if you saw somebody that looked like they were single. Like, let's say I was sitting at the bar with my friend. This is what I used to do. I would say, oh, I'm going to be more likely to meet somebody if I sit at the bar with a friend and have dinner. So, you're more susceptible and open to people coming and talking to you, as opposed to like being at a table. We would sit at the bar. I said, what if I looked across the bar and I saw like a good looking guy that looked like my age? I would automatically assume he was married, because everybody our age is married. So I would never do anything forward. I would never like wave or like send over a drink or something like to spur on a conversation, because I would assume they're married, because I assume everybody my age is married. So there just wasn't like a pool of people out there. Like I said, my friends didn't have anybody. All my friends are married. That's like the world I live in.
Right.
And, it wasn't going to happen organically, because once again, I would never know if somebody was single, and they probably assumed the same thing about me. If a man across the bar saw me and like thought maybe he was interested in me, he was probably going to assume that I was married, because everybody our age is married. So that leaves dating apps. And I did that. I went on Match.com, and I had
Those
a
are
lot of people
terrible.
interested in me.
Match.com. When I was single, my daughter, when she was little, she wrote, or she saw pictures, she said, Mom, that's delete the deleted. That's what they call it.
That's hilarious. I know. And even like if you maybe started a conversation with somebody and maybe became interested, I felt like when I met them in person, they weren't really the person that they depicted in their picture, which like sounds superficial, but part of dating is an attraction. And so to have a 10-year-old picture really isn't fair. And then I had men lie about their age, about what they did, about like having kids at home versus not having kids at home, about having married and been divorced. There are just so many people that told half truths that just became, and not only that, it's like a job. You have to be looking at your phone all the time and, shooting off witty replies and flirty, messages back, to keep the conversation going. And if you let it go for a day or two, they think you're not interested, and they either stop, texting or, get offended. So it like became like a job. So finally, I was actually out to dinner with a friend, sitting at a bar at a local restaurant, and talking about like, how am I ever going to meet anybody? And she's like, I don't know, the dating app is the only way to go. That's what everybody does. And I came home and I sat down, and I've always been a Bachelor fan, and I turned on The Bachelor, just a regular Bachelor show. And they said, we're taking casting calls for a new show if you're in your second half of life and looking for love. And I was like, this is the universe talking to me. And so I filled out that darn application, and here I am.
Wow, that is so amazing. So tell me, so you filled out the application, they call you, they say, we want you to become, did you do a little video, or do you just fill it out online, or?
So you fill it out online. It's a very long process. It takes months. So you fill out the application online, and it's a really long application. I think it's like 90 questions. I mean, it's a lot. It's a big one. Wow. In fact, I did a really lousy job, because I had 2 glasses of wine, which is a lot for me. I'm usually a 1-glasser. And I had 2 glasses of wine when I got out that night. And so I was typing, and I like literally spelled my name wrong. They thought my name was Joan Vassos for the first like 6 months of me being on the show. I was like, yeah, it's with a V, not a B. And they're like, well, your application says B. And I'm like, yeah, I can't type on my phone. You send a bunch, they ask about your family, about, your past life, what happened to your marriage or whatever. And then you send some of your social media profiles. So like my Instagram, and I think all I had was Instagram and Facebook. And I don't think I may not even had Instagram at the time. I was not a big social media person. And then you just kind of wait. And I thought, well, I did a pretty lousy job filling that out. Well, they'll never call me. And then I got a call from the casting agency. It's called Pittman Casting. And I got a call from the casting agent, actually Jackie Pittman. And she said, we got your application. Can you have a couple minutes to talk? And so she asked me about my husband, about my family. And then she said, okay, we'll call if we're interested. So about 2 weeks later, I got another call and she said, I'd like you to meet with another casting agent, but on a Zoom this time. And I had like kind of instructions on how to dress and what kind of lighting you needed. So like, this is getting like a little more serious. And I did that call, and that was a lot more. He was a real fun guy. So he was trying to get me to talk. I think they want to see like if you can talk and if you're spontaneous and you're funny and like how you react. And like, he was asking me funny questions like rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. He's like, you have to. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. And so he called his wife and he's like, what do you think she is? And she's like, a 10. And I was like, oh, you're funny. I'm like a 7.5. And she's like, oh, that's ridiculous. And they're just fun. Like they want to make sure you can talk and have fun and carry on a funny conversation. And then at the end of that call, I said, he said, well, we'll be getting back to you if we're, if you make it to the next round. I said, do you have any questions for me? And I said, yeah, how many people have applied for this? And he said, we have 30,000 applicants. And I said, well,
oh my gosh,
I won't be talking to you anymore. And he goes, I bet you will be. And then I made it to the next round. And that includes like medical evaluations and psychological evaluations. And then the final step is, after a few more videos and a couple other things, is meeting with the executive producers and their whole team. So there's like 8 of them on a Zoom. So it's none of it's in person. All of it's via Zoom because we're, looking at thousands of people across the whole country. And finally, a couple months before the show aired, I got the call saying I've been chosen.
How exciting. Now, were you just freaked out thinking like you're going to go on national television, kiss a bunch of dudes? What were your thoughts about that? And were you nervous about doing that?
Yeah. Oh my God. And then I was like, oh my God, what have I done? So when I made it, I was like, this is crazy. I shouldn't have done this. And then at the same time, my daughter had gotten pregnant. She got married and pregnant within all of this kind of time frame. And the baby was due right when we were supposed to start filming. So I, went through this whole thing in my head. Should I not go? I shouldn't leave her. It was a hard pregnancy. It was high risk. It was a big issue. And of course, she had the baby 8 days before I had to be in California for the filming. So I was really nervous about that, leaving home. And then I was nervous because this was the first Golden ever. And I didn't really know. First of all, I didn't know the producers. Like, they weren't friends of mine. They are now, and I trust them implicitly. But at the time, I didn't really know like what was in their heart. If they were going to, I know they're making a TV show, but can making a TV show coexist with helping somebody find love? And those could be completely like separate things, and they could not, do what's right. They could just want to make it funny or make us look foolish or whatever. And so I kind of hung in the background for the first several days I was there. You probably don't see me on camera hardly at all. I hung in the back. I wanted to make sure that they weren't making us look foolish, because, dating at this age, you don't want to look undignified. You don't want to look stupid. You don't want to look frivolous. We take a lot of years becoming who we are, and we're, at this age, you should be proud of yourself, and you should be, you want to show yourself in the best light. You want to be seen in the best light. And I was afraid they were going to try to make us look like the younger people, and, doing some of the things they did and expecting us to act the way they did. And so I kind of hung in the back. I was really nervous. And there's, a thought that I was like, if this doesn't feel right to me, I'm going to leave. I'm not going to stay. I don't have to stay at this thing. I don't owe them anything. But as the days went on, I started to see that, like, first of all, I had made really good friends with these 21 other women, because it's hard to find people our age that are in the same situation, that are in their 50s and 60s and 70s and single. And so I didn't have any friends like that. So I all of a sudden had like my new tribe of 21 other women who we just got along with so well. And we had these amazing conversations, and we talked about each other's stories. And, I all of a sudden started feeling less guilty about being there. I felt guilty about leaving my kids. I felt guilty about, almost like I felt like I was cheating on John, and meeting all these other women who had done the same thing. And I was like, oh my God, you deserve this. You deserve this. Yeah, I didn't think I did. So I kind of evolved as I was on the show. into thinking I did, I did deserve it, and that if all these other women did, and I had like all these new great friends. So I started becoming more trusting of the show because I trusted these other women. I felt like we had each other's back. And I saw that Gerry was like a really nice guy, that he was very open, he was vulnerable, and he was kind of leading the way for us. So he was open and vulnerable, which then made us, kind of more open to telling our stories and not being embarrassed and not feeling like we looked weak and, crying or whatever. That it was okay to show the emotions and that this was an emotional journey and it was okay to be that way on TV to the point where you forgot that you were on TV.
That's interesting. And, and I know you said Gerry, I introduced him as Gerry. I saw
everybody does. Don't worry.
Like Gerry, but it's Gerry,
Exactly.
Anyway, I remember you guys kind of had a connection and, and I thought you were going to be the front runner there. And then you had to leave because of your daughter having some complications. And talk a little bit about that, because I'm sure it was a very difficult decision for you.
Yeah. So I knew that things were a little hard when I left, and she was upset that I was leaving her. So she had a high-risk pregnancy. She almost died giving birth. She ended up having a C-section, and then she had like not a super easy baby, a baby that was awake a lot. And so I spent the 8 days pretty much with her, trying to get everything, straight, get her healed, get the baby better, teach her how to do all the things like swaddling and all those things. And then I left, but she was really upset that I was leaving her. But I promised her, I said, if you ask me to come back, if you're really having a hard time, I will come back. And I made a deal with the producers that I said, I won't come unless I can talk to her every day. So I was allowed to go and speak to her every day. And they were really good about this because they do take your phones. I mean, that's part of the journey. They want you really, really concentrating on what is happening in that house because, it's fast. So for you to actually have the time to fall in love and to get to know people and to really be engrossed in it, you can't have your phone. You can't have all that outside noise because you won't concentrate on what you're supposed to be concentrating on. So I get that they take your phones, but there was a part of me that said, I just can't desert my daughter like that. I won't do it. So they said, yeah, you can call her every day. So I called her every day and I could see she wasn't getting better. But every once in a while I would get a glimpse that maybe it was going in the right direction. And then about a week into this was the talent show, and that's when I got the date with Gerry. So I won the talent show. I think it was a pity, a pity win because I was so nervous. I had terrible stage fright. I no longer have any stage fright at all. I'm completely cured of that. Kind of because I had to do that. Like you don't get to like pick and choose what you do on the show.
Classy. I think it was classy that you wrote to him. So I thought it was good, and I could tell how nervous you were. And it's very
nervous
to think that you didn't want to be on camera. Isn't that funny? Mm-hmm. It's like, here you didn't want to be on camera. You were lonely. You went on the show. You had to go in front of this, and I think they do that stuff on purpose. Like if you say you're nervous about speaking, well, then you're going to probably speak in front of people.
You're definitely going to be on that date. Yeah.
Yeah. But here you just like come out of your shell. And isn't that funny how God sometimes just like, just opens you up to all these different possibilities and new opportunities. So how awesome.
Yeah, I was lucky. I got the date, because it's hard to get a one-on-one date, especially in like Gerry's season was really short. It was only 4 weeks. So there were only, I think, 4 or 5 one-on-one dates. So not many. So I got that one-on-one date and we kind of had a connection. And very unexpected because I kind of thought he was a little old for me. So I went on the show, then I'm going to give this a chance. And we had, like you can see on this date, we had actually a really great date. We had so many things in common, from things that weren't even particularly important, but like religion. We were both Catholic, and we talked about when we went to church, and we talked about raising kids and about liking to cook and about football Sundays. And like we connected on so many just regular life things that are important, when you're looking for somebody. And I left there, and I remember I went back to the mansion and I got in bed, and I was so hoping somebody would be awake in the house and everybody was asleep. And it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. And so I laid there like half the night just thinking about it. I was like, well, that was the first time I've ever felt like I could have a life with somebody else. Like I saw a glimmer of hope. And then the next morning, my daughter sent me a text message. She said, I need you to come home. You said if I asked you to, you would do it. And I did. And she needed me. She was tanking. And she had some postpartum depression that had kind of set in at this point, and she needed me. So I left. So
Yes.
at that point, I thought the journey was over, that I'm done. I'm one of those people that had a short stint on this show and it was great. And I had it was a wonderful experience. And I was really, really happy. I was sad that I had to leave. I was sad I'd left the 21 other women because I really had a connection with them. And I had that like connection really the night before with Gerry. But I did what I had to do. And I was completely at peace with it, that this was my journey. And then, things, once the show was over, I remained friends with a lot of people. I fortunately got invited back. So my, kind of story resonated with a few people, not tons, but a fair amount. And so I got a little bit more attention after I left, because people were saying that I did the right thing for my daughter. They wanted to talk about postpartum depression. And they also loved the same thing that you love, that I had no idea that I wasn't the only one that was feeling unseen and invisible. I thought it was just me. I was just talking about myself. And then it like resonated with so many people. And you knew this already. I did not, that it was such a common theme amongst people. And so I started getting attention for those two little things. And I ended up getting invited back to Women Tell All, and then to the finale. And then I got to go to the wedding. So I got to stay kind of in the Bachelor world for a little longer, even though I had left the show. And then I got the call and they asked me if I would be interested, if they were considering me in being the Golden Bachelorette.
Right. And so I had reached out to you after The Bachelor, because I heard you say that statement. And then I was like, I really want you on my podcast to talk about, feeling invisible, feeling unseen, unheard. And then at the time, the producers were like, yeah, let's do it. And then the producers were like, well, wait a second, because she might be the Bachelorette. There's a good chance that she could be this. And so there was this, like, I was back and forth. I was like rooting for you. And I was like, yeah, she may be, but then she won't be on my podcast for a long time.
For much longer. Sorry.
And then I was like, is it true? And then it was like, yes, you were they told you were going to be the Bachelorette. And I've got a photo here I'm going to throw up here. What a beautiful cover. Here you are on national television as the first Golden Bachelorette. So how did you find out? What happened?
So we went through a whole like iteration of different things. They came to my house and they shot what they call a package. They brought like 2 executive producers, a whole camera crew. They interviewed my family, my mom, my mother-in-law, showed me walking around like in my neighborhood, showed me walking my dog, all that. And then they take all that and they present it to ABC and Disney. And then the hires up, kind of make the decision. And so that was a process that lasted a long time, from January all the way. I didn't find out, I think, until April. April. I'm trying to remember. It was around April. And the typical way that they usually, up until then, announce a Bachelor or Bachelorette is Jesse Palmer somehow gets on a show with you or calls you or whatever. And Jesse, I got a call, or somebody set up a meeting with me, said, hey, there's a new executive producer on the show. We want you to meet him. And I was like, well, I'm not sure why they want me to meet a new executive producer, but all right. So I got on a Zoom and they were all filming Gen season in Australia. And so they called me from Australia and they put me on, with a bunch of people. And then they said, okay, we're going to introduce you to the new executive producer, but we're going to drop off. It's just going to be you and he. And it was Jesse Palmer. I was like, Jesse, what are you doing here? And he was like, he goes, he says something, I just wanted to say hi or something. And because we know each other from being on the Golden Bachelor. And so we're making small talk about, he's in Australia and his new baby and wife were there with him. And he's like, so what are you doing this summer? And I said, probably, taking the kids, to the beach and, whatever. And he goes, well, I hope you make a little extra time for the Bachelor. He goes, because you're going to be the first ever Golden Bachelorette this summer. And so that's how he told me.
I cannot even imagine how you must have felt. How long are you gone during that time? How long is the recording?
So you got to go. You have to go a little early because you have a stylist and they style you for all your clothing. So that's really good. So you go a couple like a week early. You do some press and some photo things that you need to do, and then you do your fittings, and you have like 30 racks of clothes that you try on, and you narrow it down to like what you're going to need for the season. And like as far as evening gowns, you're going to need like 9 evening gowns, or you're going to need this many daytime dresses, and this time evening things. You're going to need bathing suits and all this stuff. So you do all of those fittings in like 3 days, literally marathon days, like 10-hour days.
So
And
you don't have to
then,
pack all that stuff. You just, because I thought in the beginning, didn't like the first Bachelorette, didn't she have to like pack all this stuff up?
well, yeah. And so when you go on, when you're contestant, that you don't get any clothing, you bring everything for yourself, and you do
Oh,
all
okay.
your own hair and
But,
makeup. You do all of your clothing, and yeah, that I think
but you were the
slowly
Golden
became something.
Bachelorette, so you got the special treatment. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
so when
Gotcha.
you're like the main person, all the
Yeah.
mains get all their clothing. So even the guys, so the guys and the girls all get the whole wardrobe. They provide clothes for you. So I went and did all that, and then my filming started, and so from the beginning of filming to the end of the season was about 7.5 weeks. So you're gone for like 8.5 or 9 weeks, and then after that you're also gone. You come home, and then you go and you do press for like the beginning of the season press. So the week that your show airs, you either go to New York or California, depending on the year. I went to New York and did all my New York press for a whole week. And so you do like 50 interviews. You do an insane number of interviews. You do podcasts, you do online interviews, and then you do all the morning shows like Good Morning America and Kelly and Mark. And I did Jennifer Hudson. Trying to think who else. I did a lot of them. So you do all the morning shows. I did The View. And then mid-season, you do all the LA press. So I did like Jimmy Kimmel and all those.
Was it just so surreal? Were you just thinking like, is this my life?
It's crazy. Like sitting there with Lara Spencer on Good Morning America, and I watched her most mornings. I watched Good Morning America most mornings. I felt like I feel like an imposter, because I didn't work my whole life for this. So a lot of people that are on those shows have done something amazing and worked really, really hard for it. Like they're actors or singers, or they are, done something amazing in business. They've earned their way to those seats. And I just happened upon it. I just went on TV and I dated, and just, I lucked into it. So I feel like an imposter most of the time.
Isn't that funny? A lot of women do deal with imposter syndrome, but you know
Oh, I
what?
didn't know
I mean,
that.
you're smart, you're beautiful, you're fun. Like, why not you? So,
I don't
you
know.
know,
I don't think I earned it, but I just got lucky. I feel like it's so much of it. I mean, it's better to be lucky than to be whatever good. So apparently that applied a little bit to me.
well, let's talk a little bit about the show. So here you had, I'm going to just take you through some different pictures. Here's all the
I
men
love
that
that
were
picture.
on
Yeah.
your show. Here you are with all of them. I was probably like maybe the first night.
Yeah, that was the first night.
Okay. And so you're going out on all these dates. I mean, we're going to have to talk about Chuck because, I know that he was the
Yeah.
first one, but
Yeah.
before we get there, you were bowling. You guys went all bowling. I know there was a little drama there because evidently Chuck was taking up like all your time. He was like all over you.
Yes. That's
So
what they say.
so he was protective. He knew what he wanted and he was going after
Yeah.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, one of the guys you dated here was Keith. Wasn't that
Yeah.
Keith?
Yeah, that's Keith.
What was wrong with Keith? Because I remember I thought, you know what, I really like this guy, but then
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't for sure. What do you think about him? What were your thoughts?
So the first night, I gave him the first impression rose,
Yeah.
because he was like the guy that makes you feel immediately comfortable. I remember
Mm-hmm.
he came in this old station wagon, which was just fun and funny anyway, kind of reminding me of my childhood. And we went and we sat on the hood of the car, kind of like what you would do when you were a teenager, up in front of your house. And we just had a really easy rapport. And I remember right when kind of our time was up, they were like, yeah, wrap it up. He's like, let's just get out of here. He goes, let's just go get some wine and cheese and just go picnic on the beach or something, which is, I would have loved to have done. Like, that would be a great date. And so, it was just immediately easy with him. And we are still good friends. Like, he's a great guy. He's all about fun. So he's like the funnest guy at the house, and he is still the funnest guy. So he's the one that is the uniter of all the guys still. He is kind of the core of this whole group of 24 men still. He just maybe was just more of a party boy, and
Mm-hmm.
was all about the social aspect. And I was kind of looking for somebody who will have that part of life, but I also want somebody that will, sit at home and watch a Netflix series all night with me, or 5 nights in a row, or I don't know. I just felt like I maybe needed somebody who was a little more of a homebody.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can understand that. Okay, now we're going to talk about Mark, because this was the guy that everybody thought he was the front runner, that you were going to fall in love with him. I know his daughter was on the show
Kelsey.
before. So,
yep, I knew Kelsey. Yep.
and then there was that awkward moment on the boat where you were just like, and that's the thing. Like, there can be guys that are really good looking, smart, like on paper, they're all perfect, but then like there may be just not the maybe connection, or you don't feel like they're all into you or something. And that says a lot too. And I think you were feeling that too. You were just like, I want him to like do a little more or something. And then he didn't know that, he wasn't like, he was all into you, but he just didn't know how to like communicate it, evidently. So
so I think so kind of with most of the men, at least the ones that got down to maybe like the final 7 or 10 or whatever, there was a connection. So they wouldn't have gotten that far if there wasn't some kind of connection, like in conversations, and that I wanted to keep figuring out if maybe they were the right ones. So that was certainly true of Mark. Like, we had a good connection. We had a lot in common because like he understood Bachelor world already, kind of like I did. So most people come on the show and they have no connection. They didn't have a kid that had done it before. He had Kelsey, so he and I were kind of on even playing field because he understood like what this was all about. He'd been on the show. He'd been, he had done a hometown, so he got it. So he and I had an early, easy connection. It just, a lot of it's about timing and about how much you get to spend with each other. Because sometimes for some people, it takes a little longer to get into the comfort zone where they feel comfortable, opening up and being on TV and talking about themselves, or, establishing the connection on a deeper level. Yeah. And I think he was one of the people that it just took longer, that he needed more time, and he was very thoughtful. So you'd be talking, and he would come up with like amazing answers when you ask questions, but they were so thought out that you just didn't get enough done in a conversation.
Yeah, but you kind of allowed him to get out of his shell too, and and be able to move on too, because he lost his wife. So there was a reason that you were put in his life too. So that kind of worked out as well.
Yeah, so he and I had some real good conversations about like our similar, situations and about our, or the passing of our spouses. So we connected really well on that level. We just didn't kind of progress after that. I mean, still a great guy. And again, I'm still friends with him. I can't imagine my life not having these guys in it now, because none of us left with a bad feeling about each other. We're all friends now.
Well, you say that, and I was thinking about that when you were talking about the women, because all the women on the Golden Bachelorette, they all got along, and they're all like supportive of each other, which is why I think everybody was really like, when my husband was watching it too, he would be like, you know what, this is so much better, because the younger women are so catty and mean, and like the older women are like, they know what they want, they're classier. I shouldn't say classier, but you know what? They were more mature. And so they weren't getting into all of the, gossip. They wanted what's best for each other. So I really just thought that was really wonderful about the show, because I love the Golden Bachelorette and the Golden Bachelor more than I even love the Bachelor. So
I heard that a lot.
Does Chalk allow you to be like friends with all these guys? That was another question that people want to know. He doesn't care?
Absolutely. No. We're confident in our relationship. Yeah, totally fine.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, okay. So you also went out with Jonathan, and then there was Charles, and Charles he was so cute. He was so funny.
No.
So he's going to be the new Bachelor, right? Or is he?
We have no idea. No, they have not named a new Bachelor. They're doing casting calls. I actually got an email from the casting agency that they are doing a casting call for the Golden Bachelor, and they're taking, in the casting call said they're taking applications for the Bachelor and the contestants, which is a little weird.
Interesting. Okay.
I know. You normally pick from the group of people from the previous season, so I don't know what's going on.
Interesting. Okay. Well, soon we will know.
We will all wait and see.
That's right. Okay, and so you got down to the final 4. Okay, so Jordan.
Aren't they cute?
Guy and Chuck. Okay,
Yep.
so let's start on Jordan. So
Okay.
here's a picture of you. You're in Chicago. By the way, when you watch this back, when Chuck watches this back, does he get jealous or anything and goes like, "Oh, you were kissing that guy," or "Hey, whatever"? Like, I know you picked him, but I'm just
Yeah.
curious.
Not at
No,
all.
no jealousy. Oh my
Oh
gosh,
no.
me and my
He's here right
husband
now.
we could kill each
He's literally
other.
right over here. We could
Well,
ask
bring
him.
him on. Tell him to come on over.
Doc, come here. Just got to. We're at my house here in Maryland for until tomorrow. We're going to New York, but here, come say hi.
Yes.
And the question
Hey,
was,
Chuck.
when I was when you watched the show and I was like kissing other guys, were you jealous?
Absolutely.
No, you were not. You always
Somebody said no.
no. You said no.
Oh, can you have him scoot up just a little bit so I can hear him?
Yes, we kissed. We hugged and all this. I said, I don't want to hear it. I don't.
So he was maybe a little jealous. Kind of makes me feel good.
Yeah. I can't even imagine because I know everybody like when they leave, then like next, like you fall in love and everything, and then you got to watch the show together, and like you're apart, you can't be together and everything. It's like, oh my gosh, like that would be so awkward. I think to sit there and watch the person you fell in love with, like make out or kiss all these other people. And I know my husband and I, we were cray, so we would not be able to handle it. I don't think, but
I know.
I've said it didn't bother me. I really haven't wanted to watch it or talk about it. So,
No.
But they're friends of mine. She was going to kiss the guys, and I think her daughter said that she kissed 8 or 9 guys.
8 guys. She counted. My daughter counted.
And so, did you watch it, Chuck, or no? You didn't watch the show back.
I watched, my mother passed away, at kind of the, I think, middle of the series. And it just was too emotional for me. I watched a couple of them, and it was just better for me not to watch them.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry
and
for
I would,
mother too,
by the way. I would actually, here, I'm giving him one of the ear pods. I would actually watch it, and then I would call him like, what did you think? He was like, oh, I didn't watch it. So he didn't watch so many of them.
That totally sounds like what my husband would do, though. Honestly, he's like, I don't want to watch it. I don't want to see it.
I was there. I don't need to watch it.
And there was one date in particular that the producers had us go out and get the pool at the Bachelor Mansion. And we all wanted the helicopter ride, and we didn't know it was it. And then all of a sudden they go, what is that up in the sky? It was a helicopter. And Joan and I believe it was
Keith. Yeah,
Keith.
Yeah.
They buzzed us like twice. And I was like, this isn't fair. It's not. I want to be on that. And then Mark got to go on the big yacht. And when he came back, I go, well, tell me about the boat. And he goes, we didn't go on a boat. And I go, we all thought because they give you these little hints, and he goes, it was a yacht. It was a big yacht. Like, Disneyland was great. I'm not complaining.
I know. You got the first date.
Yes.
He's fine.
So when you guys did first meet, because you know what, we'll just skip all the way to your little look here. Here's Chuck. Okay.
Here you are.
And then here you guys are at Disney World. That was your first date.
Yep.
Did you know because like, I don't know. I think I would just know. Like, did you know, like, the first time you met him, like, he's the one? Like, I'm pretty sure he's probably going to be the one. Like, maybe I'll make sure, but did you know you first met him? Like, I know I'm picking him.
Yeah. So obviously, like, when he got out of the limo, I thought he's a good-looking guy. And then he came over, and I really loved it that he kind of knew something about me. Like, he bothered figuring out things about me. So he knew what all my kids' names were, and he knew that I had done that cooking video where I made the chicken noodle soup for my mom when she was sick. So so he had made this chocolate noodle soup. So I thought his entrance was cute, and then he knew stuff about me, and he knew about the soup. But my only question about him really was, I wonder if he's fun. And because, when I was looking for somebody the second half of my life to have fun with. I mean, that's like where kind of where you work on your life going. So you do all the work in the beginning of your life. You have a career, and you raise your kids, and you buy your house, and you save up money. So when you're at this age that we're at right now, you can go and do some fun things. You finally have the resources and the time, and those two things are actually matching up. And as long as you have your health, like, you can have some fun at this happen life. So I wanted to make sure I was going to match up with somebody that was ready to have some fun. So the first date was Disneyland. I'm like, well, this is the test. And he passed.
He sure did. And
Yeah,
here, you guys,
great time.
you were connecting there too.
Connecting.
Yes, connecting. And so, you were sitting here, you're thinking about, you got Guy, seems like a pretty nice guy. You had Pascal. Pascal, I thought, he might be able to do your hair. There's that. But
Yeah.
I thought he was a bad choice because I thought, seems like a nice guy, he's successful, he owns a shop, but like I wouldn't want all those women, and he's doing hair, but that's just me.
Yeah, you have to be awfully confident to have somebody like that as your person. Yeah.
But it was probably like, oh, he could do my hair, all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The great products.
Right, free hair products, which are expensive.
Yeah.
So then like you're trying to think about all of this stuff, and they bring in your friend Nancy. So there's a picture of you and Nancy.
Yeah.
And you're also having conversations with your kids.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that. Like, is it hard because, I know, my husband has kids, 2 daughters. I have a daughter and a son. And so blending families, sometimes there could be challenges. Tell me a little bit about the kind of conversations that were going on. What did they think of Chalk in the beginning? I know there was like some talk about, John and things like that.
Hold on. He's going to go answer his phone, and I'm going to get my other earpiece here. So there was never an element of like, if this is going to be hard, because his daughter signed him up for this. So she kind of knew what he was getting into. In fact, she was the kind of one that was encouraging him to do it. And my kids were there. So they actually, 2 of my 4 kids actually came to Tahiti and Bora Bora to meet him. And, before I introduced them to him, I was like, you're going to meet 2 people. And, I kind of described who Chuck was, and I just described Guy to them. And I said, I wouldn't want you to meet anybody, because I knew that it was going to be hard. They were going to look at this person, and this was going to be not a replacement for John, but a person that was going to be part of their next half of their lives, a different man in their lives. And so I said, I wouldn't introduce you to somebody if they weren't really important to me and if I didn't see a future with them. So I'm really going to count on you, guys, looking at them and talking to them and, validating the way I feel. I think this is, could possibly be my person. And, they actually asked him really tough questions. They had a good amount of time to talk to him. He kind of, breached the whole thing really early. He came in and he sat down, and after just a small amount of time, he goes, hey, I just want you guys to know that I'm not here trying to replace your father. I know I will always want to know about him. I want to talk about him. I wish I got to know him. But, and I'm not here to replace him. I'm just a different person now. I'm a different person in your mom's life. So he kind of made it all easier right away. And so they weren't like worried about that. So kind of after they met him, they were kind of already set for me. Like, I don't think they needed to meet anybody else. And I actually decided around that time that I didn't really want them to meet anybody else, that this was too difficult. And I knew where my heart already was. And so that's when I told Guy that, I didn't want to put him through it either. I didn't think that's really fair to have him go and, talk to my kids and, try to, show them what a life would look like with him and me when I wasn't going to pick him.
Yeah, I thought you handled that really classy and had a really good discussion with him, not making him come all the way up to the proposal.
It's stupid. I was never going to ever do that. Honestly, there was only ever going to be one at the end. I just decided that before my kids met anybody else, I didn't want to put them through it, and I didn't want to put him through it either. And I didn't want to put myself through it. Honestly, it's really emotional.
Yeah. So here's a picture of Chalk proposing.
Yeah.
And here's a picture of you with Jesse and Chalk.
Yeah.
Tell me, after all this happens and, he proposes, you say, yes, you're planning to marry this man. The next day, are you like, oh, I'm so glad this is over, I'm so excited? Were there a little bit of like, what have I done now? are we going to be like the same when we're off the show? Like, do you freak out a little bit? What are your thoughts?
So the day after, I was like, whew, this is over. I found him. We're engaged. Like, life gets to start now. And then you leave each other and you have like a whole month before you get to see each other again. After that, you see each other often, but you have this, like, we had this whole about a month that we didn't get to see each other. And as that month went on, we talked all the time, but we weren't together. I started getting really nervous. I'm like, is this false in my head? Did I imagine this wrong? Am I like, are we still going to feel the same way way about each other when we're out? Like when we're not in this environment, in this bubble. And so we finally had our first, what they call a happy couple visit. And, we were flown out to LA and you're in a secret house and it's just the two of you. And I was really nervous. And he came in the house. I had gotten there a couple of minutes before him. Then he came in. You have to fly to different airports and all that. And he came in and we were like right back to where we had left off. There was like, didn't skip a beat. It was so easy. So my angst developed only after we left each other. And then when we got back together, it was all gone.
Yeah, I think that's normal. I think it would feel weird to be together every single day. And then all of a sudden you're apart, you got engaged, you can't see each other. And how do they do that too? Did you like incognito? Like, how do you go secretly meet up with people? Like, and also like, do your friends know that, like, I know you can't say anything to anybody. So like, how do you keep a secret like that? How does your best friend not say, who'd you pick? You can tell me. Like, did you tell anyone?
I told my best friend.
Okay.
I told my two best friends. I told my two best friends and my family knew. So it wasn't like I couldn't speak about it to anybody because that would be almost impossible. It's hard enough going through the whole season not talking to your friends about like your love life and about things happening in your life, and then to actually get engaged and not tell anybody. So few people knew, people that I knew I could trust, because you always think, okay, I tell one person and I make them swear not to tell anybody, and then they tell one person to make them swear not to tell anybody. So the people I told them is like, okay, this is the way this works. I swore people that I wouldn't tell anybody. I'm telling you. I go, but you can't let it go any farther. You are only one that can know. So I told a few people, and then kind of people assume. You never validate their assumptions. You just say you got to watch. But you do go incognito. So it would have been normal that I was back in LA. I had to do a lot of press and stuff. So me going and being seen on a plane to LA was perfectly normal. Him going to LA would have been a little weird. So he had to be a lot more kind of under the radar. You're supposed to wear hats and be a little bit more disguised when you're going to the house. So in case somebody follows you, nobody ever did. They're super cautious about it. But it was also in our interest to make sure nobody found out either, because we wanted people to watch the show. Like, we worked really hard, and the producers worked really hard to create a really interesting show. And if you then let the cat out of the bag, who wins, then there goes the season. So, we didn't want people to know either.
Right. So each week your friends are watching maybe, and like, you can't say anything. You can't really tell them what's going on.
Nope.
So I think that would be so hard to do.
Yeah, you just have to be very evasive and say, I'm sorry, I can't tell you. And they would always guess. Everybody always guessed him. And I'm like, can't tell you.
They always guess
like,
who?
we know. They always guess Chalk.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we did too. We guessed Chalk.
Yeah. I knew everybody did.
Yeah.
It was so obvious.
Here you're with Neil Lane. So you get you get the ring. Is that ring like given to you? Do you have any kind of like, if something were to happen, you got to give it back or something?
Yep. That's the way it works.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to give details, but certainly the show provides it. And you do have to give it back if you don't stay together.
Gotcha.
Which seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah. Here are your women friends that you met.
Yay. Oh my gosh, I love them. That's a great picture.
Yeah. So, and I think this is a picture. Is this your mother?
Yeah, my mom and my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law on the left and my mom on the right.
Okay.
They were at, I think that was at maybe Men Tell All.
Okay.
Yeah, they got to come to lots of stuff, so it was really fun.
Yeah. And so I know that it sounds like not just by the things I see on Instagram and pictures, that you've really developed a very close knit of friends that were all kind of on the show with you. And
yeah, I talked to Kathy this morning. Yeah, there's 5 of them that I talk to at least once a week. Yeah.
Okay. And you aren't working now, so you didn't have to take off work or anything like that, right? to be on
Did
the
I took a
show?
leave of absence when I went on the show, and then I went back actually for like the next month and a half, and then I had so many press things that I needed to do. So eventually they said, yeah, you need to leave your job because, well, the show didn't say that. My job actually said, yeah, we need somebody to actually do your job, and we can't keep giving you leaves of absence for the rest of your life. So eventually I no longer had a job.
Yeah, so you have all these new opportunities. I know that I see you. At first, you were doing some kind of, I think, clothing. You've done, you have the spinach artichoke dip recipe. That's, and you have
Those are
all
just
these
things I do.
You're doing super fun Instagram things with
Yeah.
your daughter. Like, was it hard to leave work and to now kind of like you're in the limelight? What is it like being, kind of your star now, right? Like being famous, being in a grocery store. Like, is it when you go out, do people, come up to you? Is it harder to kind of go out without maybe have your makeup on? I don't know. Like,
Yeah, I always have makeup on. It's weird because I forget. It's like, I spent 60 some years being a nobody. And, I've had just a couple of months or whatever being, kind of like some people know. I mean, a lot of people don't. Some people don't watch the show, aren't interested. Reality TV is, not for everybody. And dating TV is not for everybody. So the people that watch certainly know me. But most of the time I forget. And so I'm just walking around the mall or whatever. And then people, for like the first month, people go, "Hi, Joan," and I'll go, "Hi," and I would think I knew them, and I'd be like trying to like rack my brain, how do I know this person? And they're like, "We saw you on TV," and I was like, "Oh." So now I realize when people say, "Hi, Joan," I probably don't know them, that they watched me on TV. I had that today at the mall, but there's sometimes I feel like I'm like under the radar. New York City were recognized a lot because I was on like sides of buses and in the subway and places like that. And in my hometown, I'm recognized a lot, but I can go most places and kind of just be, not worry about looking good.
Well, you have a lot of fans. You have a lot of people that are very supportive. I've seen some people that have said some negative comments. I want to ask you about that, like, because I saw on an Instagram too, like how you said it hurts. Like some people say hurtful things, and I've seen that too. Like just even for me or other people out there, that's like you can be Carrie Underwood, and somebody's going to have something negative to say about you. So how do you get over that? Like, how do you read the comments? Do you just ignore them? Like it just seems like, you're very strong to have to be able to go through something like this.
Yeah, it was surprising. I don't understand why people do that. In the beginning, I was like, my feelings were really hurt, and I was like, and the thing is, like, I'll have 95 nice comments and then 5 really mean ones, but the mean ones are so much meaner than the nice ones that I would remember the mean ones. And then I just started thinking, whoever's saying this, they don't know me. They're saying things that aren't true. Or maybe they are true. They're commenting about my looks. They're like, you have, whatever, you have too much Botox, or, whatever they're saying. Um, in the long run, I'm only reading them because I want to get to the ones from people that are talking about ways that like somehow I've affected them, like people that have lost loved ones, or that like feel unseen, or have lost a parent, or things, are writing to me because they want to have a conversation, and I want to make sure that I speak to those people. The ones that are writing to me to tell me mean things, I'm not interested in speaking to. So I just don't respond to them generally. Every once in a while I will. I can't help myself. But I'll say something like, "I don't understand why you hate me so much. If you don't like me, don't follow me. It's fine."
Yeah. Well, I love that you are open to talking to all people. And I see
Yeah.
that you comment and you've said,
Mhm.
you've developed a lot of great relationships with people
Yeah.
that, are famous, aren't famous, and
Yeah.
I think too, like I sent you a couple texts and I was like, hey,
Yeah.
I'll give you my little advice too before you picked
Yeah.
one of the guys. But like you
Yeah.
always were responsive and always, and you know that you care about people and that you
Mhm.
want to do you want to help other people. And I
Yeah,
think
I truly
that's
do. I
awesome.
mean, that was the point of going on the show, not like for me personally to find love, which, I certainly wanted that, but I thought there's like a way bigger picture than just me finding love. Like this show can't just be about me, or nobody would give a crap. It's about people my age finding love, or people, that are in the second half of life finding love. So I knew that it was bigger, like the picture was bigger than just me. Like that was naive to think it wasn't. So to make this journey only about me and not answer people that are talking about like how it affected them would be like, just like, it wasn't the point.
Well, look at you now. Look at this picture of you.
Ah.
We've got you on the cover of a magazine. Here you are on the cover of US Weekly, and you've been on the cover of People magazine.
Crazy
what
stuff.
do you say now? Like what's next for your future? Like here's you and Chalk.
Yeah.
Where do you go from here? When's the wedding date? Are you planning a wedding right now?
There will be a wedding. It's not planned yet. We're like just kind of enjoying just being like a couple and going out with other couples and, going on vacation. We're finally going on a vacation together in a couple weeks. So yeah, we're just enjoying being a couple now. We will plan a wedding eventually, just not like immediately. I don't know what the future looks like because this is like a new world for me. So if we'll just kind of see what kind of evolves. Like this is all just evolved. I just am kind of waiting to see what evolves. I mean, people have asked me what I would like to do. I would like to continue talking about like this journey and how it's evolved for me and maybe how it could evolve for other people. Maybe this helps. If it doesn't, I love doing a good cooking video. I have a whole bunch of them on TikTok and some on Instagram. Maybe I'd like to do something, cooking show, or people have asked me if I want to write a book. I'm not sure if I have a developed enough story yet. I may need another year or two of figuring out what happens with all this. I don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen, but I'm open for it. Like it's weird to be this age and to actually have new opportunities. It doesn't happen to people in their 60s usually. So I'm just taking it all in and, hoping, if nothing else comes of it, I got a great fiance and soon to be husband. And that's exactly why I went on the show. If something else comes of it, I'm open and to see what it looks like.
That's so awesome. Like you were stuck at one point, you felt like there wasn't any, what else is there? And then look how, I feel like God has just showed up in your life in such a big way. Yeah. And, there's so many new opportunities for you. And I'm excited to see what's next. Like you said, if you're going to write a book, or who knows, you could be in a movie, Who
knows?
So, yeah. So I appreciate you so much for being on this podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
We went a little over, but like I could sit here and talk to you all day long.
I think we could do this. Maybe we should do a part 2 if you're interested. I would love to do it.
We could do that. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
How do you want to leave? Of course. And is there? I'm gonna leave you with this one last question. What do you want to be known for?
I suppose like in this dating world, I mean, there's maybe lots of things I'd like to be known for, like as being a good friend, a good parent, and leaving, everybody to know that I, support them and people in my life. But I think as far as like in this world of finding love or having hope later in your life, that, kind of age is just a number. That, I entered this weird phase of my life that I never thought I was going to be in when I was 60. And that I kind of had to be brave, and fortune favors the bold, and to do those bold things may change the trajectory of where your life is looking like, what it's looking like. So be bold, do something bold, and don't be afraid, or if you're afraid, just do it anyway.
I love that. Thank you so much, Joan. Thanks for being on the podcast. And if you're watching this podcast, See the Unseen Podcast, please hit the like or subscribe button, and please comment below. I read all the comments and I appreciate the feedback. You can find my podcast on Apple Podcast, Amazon Prime, Spotify, and YouTube. So in case you haven't been told today, or you're feeling unseen or unheard or unloved, I just want you to know that God sees you, He hears you, and He loves you. And many blessings to all my friends out there. And thank you for watching the podcast.
Thank you.